I've been married for 7 years, together for 10.
On paper, we looked solid, shared routines, inside jokes, plans that stretched years ahead.
But a few months ago, something shifted in a way I couldn't quite name.
She started guarding her phone like it was a live grenade.
Notifications went silent. Late nights at work became normal. When I asked simple questions, she snapped back like I was interrogating her.
I told myself marriages go through phases, that stress can make people sharp and distant. Still, there was this constant pressure in my chest, like my instincts were trying to scream while my brain kept telling them to shut up.
The little things piled up fast.
She changed how she dressed, suddenly more effort, new lingerie I never saw her wear for me.
She laughed at texts and then tilted the screen away when I walked by.
If I asked who she was talking to, she'd roll her eyes and say I was being paranoid or insecure. Once, I found a receipt for a hotel bar in her coat pocket.
She claimed it was from a co-worker's birthday thing and called me controlling for even questioning it.
I apologized that night, even though something in my gut felt rotten. That's when I realized I was starting to doubt myself more than her.
The actual discovery wasn't dramatic at first.
No screaming, no explosion, just a random, stupid moment. She left her tablet at home one morning, something she never did.
It buzzed on the kitchen counter while I was making coffee.
I wasn't trying to snoop, I swear that to myself even now. But the message preview popped up with a heart emoji and a name I didn't recognize. My hands started shaking before my brain caught up. I opened it, telling myself there had to be a reasonable explanation.
There wasn't.
What I saw was intimate, casual, familiar in a way that punched the air out of my lungs.
This wasn't flirting. This was ongoing. This was real.
I sat there longer than I want to admit, just scrolling. There were plans, jokes, complaints about me.
She'd sent photos I hadn't seen in years.
Every swipe felt like reopening the same wound in a slightly worse way.
Then my phone rang, her name on the screen.
She was asking if I'd seen her tablet.
My voice cracked when I said yes.
She went quiet for half a second, then immediately got defensive, asking why I was going through her stuff. That's when the shock hardened into something sharper. Even caught, her first instinct wasn't guilt.
It was blame.
She rushed home early, slammed the door so hard a picture fell off the wall. I was sitting at the table with the tablet between my hands like evidence in a courtroom. Before I could say anything, she launched into how I'd violated her privacy, how this was exactly why she felt emotionally unsafe with me. When I asked who he was, she actually laughed, and said I was overreacting. She claimed it was just texting, just attention, nothing physical. Then she changed the story and said it had already ended. 5 minutes later, she admitted they were still talking but only as friends.
The lies stacked up faster than I could process them.
When I showed her the messages that proved it was physical, her face went cold.
No tears. No apology. Just irritation.
She said I'd been distant for years, that I didn't make her feel desired, that this just happened. She insisted it wasn't cheating because she'd already checked out emotionally.
Hearing that felt worse than the messages themselves.
Like our entire marriage had been quietly downgraded without my consent. I remember asking her if she ever planned to tell me.
She shrugged and said she didn't want to hurt me.
That was the moment I realized how twisted her logic had become.
After that, everything went fast and slow at the same time. I walked out of the house because I couldn't breathe in it anymore.
Sat in my car, hands on the steering wheel, staring at nothing for almost an hour. My phone kept buzzing, messages from her swinging wildly between anger and panic. One minute she said I was blowing this up and embarrassing her, the next she begged me not to tell anyone because it would ruin her life.
I didn't reply.
I felt hollow, like someone had scooped me out and left the shell behind. The shock was finally giving way to rage, and I was terrified of what I might say if I opened my mouth.
That night, the anger crashed into grief.
I slept on a friend's couch, staring at the ceiling, replaying our entire relationship like I could spot the exact moment it went wrong. Every memory felt contaminated. Trips we took, promises we made, even the way she used to look at me, I couldn't tell what was real anymore. I kept checking my phone, half expecting an apology that never came. Instead, she sent a long message explaining how lonely she had been, how this wasn't who she really was. Reading it, I realized she was still centering herself, still rewriting the story so she wasn't the villain. And that hurt almost as much as the betrayal itself.
The next day brought clarity in an ugly way.
A mutual friend called me, awkward and hesitant, and asked if I was okay. That's when I found out she'd already told people her version. Apparently, I was cold, emotionally absent, and pushed her into someone else's arms.
Hearing that flipped a switch in me. Not only had she cheated, she was now outsourcing the blame. I drove back to the house without warning.
She was there, packing a bag, talking on the phone like nothing had happened. When she saw me, she snapped that I was being dramatic and told me to leave so she could have space. It finally hit me how little my pain mattered to her.
I asked her point-blank if she was still seeing him.
She hesitated just long enough to give herself away, then said it was complicated.
That was all I needed. Something inside me settled, heavy but clear.
I told her I was done arguing with someone who couldn't even be honest when everything was already in ruins. She rolled her eyes and said I was throwing away years over one mistake. I reminded her it wasn't one mistake, it was months of choices and lies. For the first time, she looked scared. Not because she'd hurt me, but because she was losing control of the narrative. The days after felt surreal. We moved around each other like strangers, dividing time in the house, speaking only when necessary. She alternated between icy silence and sudden kindness, like she thought flipping a switch might reset everything. One evening she cooked my favorite meal and acted like we were normal again, even joked about a show we used to watch.
I almost broke.
Then her phone lit up on the counter with his name.
She snatched it away too fast and snapped at me for looking. Any lingering hope I had evaporated right there.
I wasn't married to someone confused, I was married to someone actively choosing to lie. After that, I started thinking seriously about the future. Nights were the worst, silent, empty, filled with memories and questions I couldn't answer. I realized I couldn't trust her anymore, not with my heart, not with my life. I tried talking to her about counseling, boundaries, rebuilding trust, but every suggestion bounced off her like water off stone. She claimed she wanted space to figure herself out, but I saw through it. The space she wanted was a free pass to continue her lies without accountability. At that point, I knew I had a choice: stay and fight a war I'd already lost, or step out before I lost myself completely. I made the hardest decision of my life, I left.
Not angrily, not dramatically, just quietly, deliberately.
I packed my things, left a note explaining I needed time and distance, and stayed with a friend.
No shouting, no threats, no bargaining.
For the first time in months, I felt my chest unclench. The house felt emptier, colder, but it was honest. I spent days walking, writing, and sitting in silence, letting the anger, the sadness, and the betrayal settle in without trying to push them down. It hurt like hell, but it also reminded me that I was still here, still whole, and still capable of choosing myself. In the weeks that followed, I went through the full spectrum of emotions: grief, rage, disbelief, and eventually a quiet acceptance. I realized this wasn't just about her cheating, it was about me learning my own worth. I started setting boundaries, reconnecting with friends I'd neglected, and reclaiming parts of myself I'd lost in trying to make her happy. Every day felt like peeling back a layer of pain, exposing the parts of me that had been buried under lies and excuses.
And slowly, I noticed something I hadn't felt in years: peace.
Not closure, exactly, but the kind of calm that comes from knowing you won't let someone else define your happiness.
Looking back now, the whole experience taught me brutal but necessary lessons. People can lie, betray, and manipulate, but that doesn't have to destroy you. Trust is earned, not assumed, and sometimes walking away isn't giving up, it's choosing yourself. I'm still healing, still rebuilding, and still learning to forgive myself for trusting too long. If there's one piece of advice I'd give anyone in a similar situation, pay attention to your instincts, don't ignore the red flags, and remember that staying true to yourself is never a mistake. Life goes on, even when the people you love the most fail you.